You know, for people holding space for dealing with difficult issues and violent conflict in these tough places in the world, it can be very, very lonely. And there's only so much that your manager or your supervisor can help you to work through. And sometimes having a coach is exactly that outside person to talk about things with, to unpack and unravel questions, concerns, and anxieties, but importantly, to also see ways that you can begin to influence the situation, right? There can be moments that even though our job is to keep hope alive, there can be moments when we might lose that hope or we may doubt ourselves or we may be struggling with things around our own performance as leaders. And this is where having that third ear and heart listening to the leader's challenges is so important in the kind of work that we do at Search for Common Ground. My own personal experience has been extraordinary with the Coach Initiative.
Lena Slachmuijlder is Senior Vice President of Programs for Search for Common Ground. Volunteer coaches with the Coach Initiative can be very proud of their work for this special nonprofit organization. Listen as we find out more about Search for Common Ground.
Do you ever stop to wonder, of all the worlds that humans could have created, how did we end up with this one? This land of barbed wire, these cities of rubble, the deep political divides and deeper personal pain. The answer, in short, is violence. Violence that rips apart lives and communities, leaving suffering in its wake. Violence is a choice, and choices are not destiny. We are a Search for Common Ground, the world's largest peacebuilding organization. Over 1,000 people spread across 4 continents, working on the front lines of violent conflict to turn suspicion and fear into community.
So Search for Common Ground delivers programs that enable people to understand how they can work together and prevent violence from breaking out. For example, we may be working in a country like Afghanistan today, and we're trying to enable communities across the country to be able to deal with their differences without violence. This may mean that we're enabling people to learn about mediation. It may be that we're having radio or television programs that seek to enable people to understand how they can collaborate across lines of difference. It may mean that in Niger, we're working with people that had been abducted into the Boko Haram violent extremist movement, who now have come back to their communities and need to heal the relationships with the communities that perhaps they even harmed as perpetrators. So Search for Common Ground has a wide-ranging toolbox of ways to help people to move away from seeing each other as enemies and work together as allies to solve problems together without violence. We were nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2018. We have about 1,000 staff across the world working on hundreds of projects at any one time. More than 90% of our nearly 1,000 staff are people working in their home countries on those conflicts. But the other 10% are people from probably about 50 different countries who are working not in their home country as expatriates. Sometimes they may be in leadership positions as a country director. In other instances, they may be offering technical assistance in monitoring, evaluation, and research. In other instances, they might be supporting on finance and compliance and audits. And they're supporting in, perhaps in a regional capacity or across multiple countries. Those are people that often stay for several years in that country. They may move on to another location. We have women heading many of our country programs, from Kenya to Afghanistan to even our very largest program in Niger is headed by women. We have women playing all kinds of roles in program implementation, as well as in the support on grants management, on human resources and finance. In some places, though, I would add that it can be tricky for us to find the right a gender balance in places where women aren't always encouraged to work, or in some of the more dangerous places where sometimes women are less supported by their families and societies to be deployed into remote and dangerous parts of northern Mali or near the Somali border, etc. So there are times when we have fewer women in some of our positions. Yes, so I've been with Search for Common Ground for 21 years. I started in Burundi, where I led a team of Hutu and Tutsi journalists during the ongoing conflict, who were really making a difference by being able to bring together people on air who otherwise would not have been able to have conversations. Through that work, I stayed for another 10 years working in Burundi, in Congo, where I was the country director, and also opened up our programmings in Rwanda. In the subsequent 10 years, I've had the honor of being able to visit every single country program where Search works and has worked. And it's a true honor to go and offer support and coaching and learn so much about new ways that our teams, even in tough new places like Afghanistan or Cameroon, are actually being able to build bridges of trust and collaboration. For people holding space for dealing with difficult issues and violent conflict in these tough places in the world, it can be very, very lonely. And there's only so much that your manager or your supervisor can help you to work through. And sometimes having a coach is exactly that outside person to talk about things with, to unpack and unravel questions, concerns, and anxieties, but importantly, to also see ways that you can begin to influence the situation, right? There can be moments that even though our job is to keep hope alive, there can be moments when we might lose that hope, or we may doubt ourselves, or we may be struggling with things around our own performance as leaders. And this is where having that third ear and heart, listening to the leaders' challenges, is so important in the kind of work that we do at Search for Common Ground. My own personal experience has been extraordinary with the Coach Initiative, because year after year, I've been able to identify particular dilemmas, challenges to my own leadership, to ask myself, how can I bring more to what the organization needs? How can I be more in terms of helping the organization to position itself even better? And as the organization has gone through, as many organizations do, change and reform and restructuring, it's been critical to ask myself, what kind of leadership is most needed now? And how can I grow that? And how can I change the habits, particularly having stayed in the organization for so long? How can I also make sure that I leave behind the habits that may have served me in the past, but no longer are serving me as I grow into a different kind of leadership? It's been very effective for me to work with Coach Initiative. I've consistently found excellent matches, people who may not have stepped a foot in the conflict zones where we work, but who understand that managing an organization with a mission such as ours is complex. Working in it with an organization, as many nonprofits are, that is so mission driven, can bring out both the best and the worst of leaders at times, right? That there is sometimes a level of stress and tension and ambition that can be important to manage well, with a real clear sense of, again, who am I as a leader? And what am I trying to, I always call it my learning edges. What are my learning edges that I'm sharpening? And how can I use the coach to help me to do that so that I'm not only relying on my family, my friends, my manager to have these kinds of conversations. It's really a safe, dedicated space for self-growth and learning. I think one of the challenges that many organizations like Search for Common Ground face at this time is that we're in a period of time where the crises are interconnected and they are multi-layered. And it's very easy, even when you are committed to working on climate or on women's empowerment or on ending violent conflict, to feel overwhelmed, to feel waves and waves of dissatisfaction that can lead you to feeling inadequate or feeling like you're never enough, because the context and the ambition of wanting to make change is so great. And while that's an incredible pull factor that keeps us and others at these kinds of organizations, if it's not managed with the ability as a leader to make choices, to know about self-care, to know about caring for others, and to know about how to draw lines and address difficult and conflictual situations with others, well, then we will see burnout of otherwise highly capable and talented leaders. And so for leaders working in the nonprofit sector in today's world, there's a need for a prompting and a support for self-awareness, for self-reflection, for learning from others, and for, importantly, being able to free up that inner voice to have honest and authentic conversations. And that's where a coach can also help. A coach oftentimes can be an authentic and honest voice in a way that your partner or your supervisor just wouldn't be able to, because they have so many other investments in the relationship. And so there's a real value in coaching, helping these leaders in, again, sometimes difficult situations, big ambitious goals, to really be able to have some of those honest conversations about one's own ambition, capability, and that learning edge. We know more than ever before that an investment in peace can save lives and prevent more violence. And the cost of allowing wars to take place is only going to lead to more destruction, more polarization, more human suffering, when we're actually the generation that knows how we can prevent such human suffering. And so the call that Search for Common Ground is making is to be part of this growing movement of people who understand the return on investment, the impact that peace building makes, and to make choices in your own life, in your communities, and by supporting Search for Common Ground. You know, I've chosen to stay at Search for Common Ground for 21 years because I believe that it is the most important challenge that we face as a human race. And that if we are able to end violent conflict, we will see development and collaboration in all other areas of our human experience, from education to health to equality. And so this mission is so compelling to me from the time that I saw it at work in Burundi, where radio programs, where working with women and youth-led organizations was able to prevent violence, to the work that I see today in Sri Lanka, where working with online influencers, we're also able to counter rumors and prevent people from taking up violence offline. And so this work is really very, very true to my heart. And it's a choice year after year to have stayed so long with this organization.